This man ordered the deaths of over 4,000 people before his 30th birthday. He dissolved victims in acid baths, fed others to exotic animals, and turned murder into a business model. Pablo Escobar's reign of terror made him the richest criminal in history. But his path to power started with stealing tombstones as a teenager. Today we're tracing the blood-soaked timeline that transformed a petty street thief into the most brutal crime lord of modern times. Every decision, every murder, every calculated move that built his empire of fear. At age 11, Pablo Escobar strangled his neighbor's cat with his bare hands. He felt nothing, no remorse, no fear, no excitement. He simply watched the life drain from the animal's eyes and walked home for dinner. This moment revealed something chilling about the boy, who would become history's most violent drug lord. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born December 1, 1949, in Rio Negro, Colombia. His father Abel worked as a farmer and watchman. His mother Hermilda taught elementary school. The family moved to Medellin when Pablo was young, settling in the Barrio Tablazo neighborhood. Poverty surrounded them, but they weren't the poorest. Abel struggled to provide for 7 children on irregular wages. Hermilda's teaching salary barely covered basic necessities. Medellin in the 1960s bred desperation. Unemployment reached 20%. Young men faced 2 choices: factory work for starvation wages, or crime for quick money. Pablo chose crime, but his approach differed from typical street thugs. While other kids stole candy or small change, Pablo studied his targets. He planned each theft weeks in advance. His criminal career began with stealing tombstones from cemetery graves. Pablo and his cousin Gustavo Gaviria would remove the marble headstones at night, sand off the inscriptions, and resell them to monument shops across town. The scheme required no violence and generated steady income. But Pablo soon grew bored with simple theft. By age 16, Pablo escalated to kidnapping classmates from wealthy families. He would befriend the children of businessmen and doctors, learn their routines, then orchestrate their abduction for ransom money. Most kidnappers in Medellin were desperate amateurs who panicked under pressure. Pablo remained calm throughout negotiations. He spoke to frantic parents with the same tone he used ordering coffee. This ability to separate emotion from business became his signature trait. Pablo could torture a rival in the morning and play soccer with neighborhood children that afternoon. He attended family dinners after ordering executions. Friends and family never saw him lose his temper or show stress. Criminal psychologists later identified this compartmentalization as classic psychopathic behavior. Pablo's first murder occurred when he turned 20. A debt collector named Hernan Henao had been pressuring Pablo's illegal lottery operation for protection money. Most young criminals would have paid or fled. Pablo invited Henao to a warehouse meeting to discuss terms. When Henao arrived, Pablo shot him 3 times in the chest with a .38 revolver. The murder wasn't committed in anger or self-defense. Pablo had planned every detail. He chose the location for easy body disposal. He arranged alibis with associates. He even brought plastic sheets to contain blood spatter. After killing Henao, Pablo calmly drove to his girlfriend's house for dinner. He never mentioned the incident to anyone. This calculated approach separated Pablo from typical street violence. Gang members killed rivals in fits of rage or during heated confrontations. Pablo treated murder as a business expense. He kept detailed records of hits, tracking costs and effectiveness. Each killing served a specific purpose: eliminating competition, silencing witnesses, or sending messages to future targets. But Pablo's capacity for violence originated much earlier than his criminal career. Those childhood experiments with neighborhood pets revealed his complete emotional detachment from suffering. He killed cats, dogs, and birds, not for pleasure or anger, but to understand death itself. This emotional void would become his greatest weapon as he entered the cocaine trade. Pablo's first cocaine deal ended with 7 corpses scattered across a warehouse floor. The established dealers who invited him to the meeting expected to intimidate a small-time criminal. Instead, they discovered a killer who had transformed murder into psychological warfare. In 1973, Colombia's cocaine trade operated through loose networks of independent smugglers. The Ochoa brothers controlled most of Medellin's trafficking routes. Fabio Restrepo managed operations in the city's eastern districts. Carlos later handled transportation to the Bahamas. These men had built their empires through traditional methods: bribery, territorial agreements, and occasional violence when negotiations failed. Pablo entered this world as an outsider. The established traffickers viewed him as another street punk trying to muscle into their business. They had seen dozens of young criminals attempt similar takeovers. Most disappeared after receiving warnings. Others fled the city after beatings. None had ever posed a serious threat to their control. But Pablo approached the cocaine trade like a military campaign. He spent months studying rival operations, tracking shipment schedules, and identifying key personnel. He mapped every warehouse, safe house, and laboratory in Medellin. Pablo recruited enforcers not from street gangs, but from rural areas where men understood violence and loyalty. These recruits had no connections to existing criminal networks. Pablo's signature execution method emerged during this period. The Colombian necktie involved cutting a victim's throat and pulling their tongue through the wound. This technique served multiple purposes beyond killing. The grotesque display terrified witnesses and demonstrated Pablo's complete disregard for human dignity. Bodies left with Colombian neckties sent clear messages to rivals: surrender your territory or face systematic elimination. The systematic destruction of Ochoa family competition began in late 1974. Pablo identified 12 independent operators who supplied the Ochoas with coca paste. Instead of attacking the Ochoa brothers directly, Pablo eliminated their suppliers through coordinated hits. Each target died in increasingly brutal fashion. The first supplier was shot cleanly. The second suffered torture before execution. The third received the Colombian necktie treatment. Pablo's psychological manipulation reached beyond direct violence. He would execute one competitor in spectacular fashion, then approach that victim's associates with business propositions. The surviving criminals understood their choice: work for Pablo or join their former partner. This strategy eliminated entire networks without firing additional shots. His most audacious early power grab targeted Medellin's main cocaine processing laboratory. The facility belonged to 3 established families who had operated together for years. Pablo studied their security patterns for weeks, identifying shift changes and vulnerable entry points. On March 15, 1975, his team struck during the night shift change. 23 people died in the attack. Pablo personally executed the 3 family leaders with shots to the head. The warehouse massacre that terrified hardened criminals contained a strategic innovation that separated Pablo from typical street violence. Unlike previous hits conducted in private, Pablo filmed the torture and execution of the cocaine dealers who had underestimated him. The grainy footage showed him methodically questioning each victim before killing them with precise shots. He distributed copies throughout Medellin's criminal underworld. This recording established murder as marketing. Previous drug lords used violence reactively to solve problems. Pablo used violence proactively to prevent problems from developing. The film demonstrated his capabilities while warning potential rivals about challenging his authority. With local competition eliminated through calculated brutality, Pablo controlled 80% of Medellin's cocaine trade by age 26. His empire now required expansion beyond Colombia's borders to sustain its growth. Pablo's rivals made one fatal error. They held their secret alliance meeting in a warehouse owned by his business partner. 200 people died because of that mistake. By 1978, Pablo's rapid expansion had created powerful enemies across Colombia. The Cali cartel controlled trafficking routes through the Pacific coast. The Norte del Valle organization dominated the northern corridors to Venezuela. Smaller family operations managed regional distribution networks. These groups had coexisted for years through informal agreements and territorial boundaries. Pablo's aggressive takeover tactics shattered this criminal equilibrium. His systematic elimination of competitors forced surviving organizations to choose between submission or alliance. The Cali cartel, led by Gilberto and Miguel Rodriguez Orejuela, chose alliance. They believed Pablo's intelligence network was limited to Medellin. This assumption proved deadly. The Cali leadership contacted representatives from 12 major trafficking organizations. They proposed a coordinated strike against Pablo's operations. The meeting would include bosses from Bogotá, Barranquilla, and Cartagena. Each organization would contribute men and resources for simultaneous attacks on Pablo's laboratories and storage facilities. What the Cali cartel didn't know was that Pablo had corrupted associates within their inner circle 2 years earlier. Roberto Escobar, Pablo's brother and accountant, had secretly recruited Carlos Aguilar, the Cali cartel's transportation coordinator. Aguilar provided Pablo with meeting details, participant lists, and planned attack strategies. Pablo also maintained paid informants within 6 of the 12 attending organizations. Pablo immediately began planning La Catedral, his coordinated response to eliminate every rival boss simultaneously. He identified the primary strongholds for each organization: laboratories, safe houses, and family residences. Pablo's intelligence network mapped security details, escape routes, and operational schedules for each target. The operation required 150 gunmen deployed across 4 cities. The rival meeting occurred on October 13, 1978, in a Cali warehouse that allegedly belonged to neutral parties. The location seemed secure to attending bosses. Pablo had been feeding intelligence about the meeting site to his corrupted associate for months. The warehouse actually belonged to Maria Santos, Pablo's secret business partner, who laundered money through legitimate import companies. At exactly 9:30 p.m., Pablo's team struck 12 locations simultaneously. The warehouse meeting became a slaughter. Gunmen blocked all exits before opening fire on the assembled crime bosses. 17 leaders died in the first minutes. Survivors who attempted escape found armed men waiting outside every door and window. The coordinated attacks across Colombia eliminated entire family operations in single nights. Pablo's teams didn't simply kill bosses, they executed sons, brothers, and key lieutenants to prevent succession. The Herrera family lost 11 members. The Santa Cruz organization ceased to exist after losing its leadership structure. During this operation, Pablo also eliminated potential traitors within his own organization. He had identified 3 associates who showed signs of disloyalty through surveillance and loyalty tests. These men disappeared the same night as the rival bosses. Pablo understood that successful betrayal required eliminating threats from within and without simultaneously. The aftermath created exactly what Pablo intended: a massive power vacuum in Colombia's cocaine trade. Surviving traffickers either fled the country or approached Pablo's representatives to negotiate submission. Within 6 months, Pablo controlled 80% of cocaine trafficking routes throughout Colombia. The strategic mistake that cost 200 lives was trusting appearances over intelligence. The rival cartels believed they had chosen neutral ground for their alliance meeting, but they had walked directly into Pablo's trap. With domestic competition destroyed through systematic betrayal and coordinated violence, Pablo faced his most dangerous enemy: the Colombian government itself. Pablo forced Colombia to rewrite its constitution by systematically murdering every judge who supported extradition laws. Over 200 members of the judiciary died before the government surrendered. By 1982, Pablo's cocaine empire generated $3 billion annually. The Colombian government faced mounting pressure from the United States to extradite major drug traffickers. The Reagan administration threatened to cut foreign aid and impose trade sanctions unless Colombia cooperated with American law enforcement. President Belisario Betancourt signed an extradition treaty allowing Colombian criminals to face trial in U.S. courts. Pablo's response was immediate and brutal. He declared war against the Colombian state with a simple ultimatum: plata o plomo, silver or lead. Government officials could accept bribes or face assassination. There would be no middle ground. Pablo's message reached every judge, prosecutor, and politician involved in anti-drug efforts within 48 hours. The systematic assassination campaign began with Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla. On April 30, 1984, gunmen on motorcycles shot Lara 12 times while he rode in his official vehicle through Bogotá. Pablo had marked Lara for death after the minister publicly linked him to cocaine trafficking. The execution sent a clear message. Even cabinet-level officials faced death for opposing the cartel. Pablo's hit squads targeted the entire judicial system. Supreme Court Justice Carlos Medellin Forero died in his home. Appeals Court Judge Tulio Manuel Castro fell outside his courthouse. Prosecutor Ana Lucia Gonzalez was gunned down at a restaurant. Each killing followed the same pattern: professional execution in public locations to maximize psychological impact. Within 2 years, over 40 judges had fled the country or requested transfers to non-drug cases. The Palace of Justice siege represented Pablo's most audacious attack on government authority. On November 6, 1985, M19 guerrillas stormed Colombia's Supreme Court building in Bogotá. The attack appeared to be a leftist political operation, but investigators later discovered Pablo had financed the assault. His true target was the court's extradition files. The siege lasted 27 hours and resulted in 98 deaths, including 11 Supreme Court justices. Pablo's psychological warfare extended beyond government officials to civilian targets. He ordered bombings of shopping centers, airline flights, and newspaper offices. The deadliest attack occurred on November 27, 1989, when a bomb destroyed Avianca Flight 203, killing all 107 passengers. The target was a single informant who never boarded the plane. Pablo murdered 106 innocent people to eliminate one witness. The most shocking betrayal came from within Pablo's inner circle. His cousin Gustavo Gaviria, who had been his closest associate since childhood, secretly contacted government negotiators in early 1990. Gustavo offered to surrender Pablo's location and operational details in exchange for immunity and witness protection. The negotiations continued for 3 weeks before Pablo discovered the betrayal through intercepted communications. Pablo's response demonstrated his complete ruthlessness toward disloyalty. He ordered Gustavo's capture on August 11, 1990. For 6 hours, Pablo personally tortured his cousin in a warehouse outside Medellin. He used pliers to remove Gustavo's fingernails and teeth. He applied electric cables to his genitals. Finally, Pablo shot Gustavo in the head and dumped his mutilated body in a public square as a warning to other potential traitors. Gustavo's public execution eliminated any remaining thoughts of betrayal among Pablo's associates. The message was clear. Family relationships meant nothing when business loyalty was at stake. By 1991, Pablo had achieved the impossible, forcing a sovereign government to negotiate with terrorists rather than enforce its own laws. Pablo Escobar's transformation from cemetery thief to narco-terrorist cost 4,000 lives and generated $30 billion in blood money. His empire proved that modern criminal organizations require industrial-scale violence to maintain control. The numbers tell the story. 200 judges murdered, 1,000 police officers killed, 3,000 kidnappings executed. Pablo didn't just run a drug cartel. He operated a death machine. His methods became the standard blueprint for every major cartel that followed. The Sinaloa organization adopted his corruption strategies. Los Zetas copied his psychological warfare tactics. Modern traffickers still use his compartmentalized violence approach. Subscribe for more investigations into criminal psychology. Check our description for complete sources. Pablo's legacy of systematic brutality continues shaping organized crime today.